Okay, so for my project, I'm going to be talking about the history of the wheelchair. So as you can see here on this first slide, these are just three different timeline examples of the wheelchair and how the development has come along over the past hundreds of years. So what exactly is a wheelchair? Well, if we look at the definition by the ADA, which is the Americans with Disability Act, a wheelchair is defined as a manually operated or power-driven device that is designed primarily for use by an individual with a mobility disability for the main purpose of indoor and both outdoor use. And 27.7 million people in the U.S. depend on a wheelchair. So what can cause someone to have to use a wheelchair? Well, there's many different reasons, but some of the most common that people would associate their knowledge with is issues such as physical injuries, amputations, spinal cord injuries, muscular dystrophy, spina bifida, cerebral palsy, or issues like poor circulation and other things of that nature. So the early years or the development of the wheelchair, there's no real date of when it was invented, but the first creations of wheelchair and mobility was referred to as wheeled furniture. And there were inscriptions founded in China on a stone slate that would have assumed to be someone in this sort of wheeled furniture. There was also a depiction on a frieze on a Greek vase that displayed a child's bed being used as wheeled furniture, and they both date back to 5th and 6th century BCE. So just some early uses of the introduction of what this wheeled furniture was sort of used for. So the first records, wheelchairs were first introduced as wheeled furniture and wheeled seating. That's what they were referred to as. But some of the first documented usage of wheeled seating dates 3 centuries after the inscriptions and friezes were looked at. And the Chinese are credited for the early production efforts. So they sort of were the ones that developed and began working more into developing it past wheeled furniture. Along with using wheeled seats, they also use wheelbarrows to transport those with disabilities. So sort of using the two and sort of cross inventing and developing a wheelchair with the same abilities. More of the early years, it wasn't until around 525 CE that we seen a better connection between the concept of wheelbarrows and wheeled furniture, and this was a lot of depictions we saw in different forms of Chinese art. We saw more of the idea of a wheelbarrow, but people were sitting in them and how they were being used. We saw more people involvement between the two. So more of further advancements, Europeans are acknowledged for the advancement of it after the Chinese. They created a similar but overall more improved system. In 1595, although the inventor is unknown, it was from Spain. They're credited for creating a wheelchair for King Philip II, and up in the corner, that's the picture that is depicted. So as you can see, it looks, it's more developed than a wheelbarrow as the Chinese, but it doesn't really look that mobile as I would assume. And here's sort of a comparison of the Greek vase and the China, the 6th century. You can see it looks more like furniture with just the two wheels on the side, and the one from Spain. So there is a development that we see, but it's still taking time. So the first self-propelling wheelchair, it wasn't until 1655 that a 22-year-old paraplegic watchmaker, Stephen Farfler, developed the first self-propelling wheelchair. So that's the first one that someone can operate on their own. It consisted of an actual chair that had armrests and legs, so it was more like a sitting type environment, and you cranked. It used a crank and cogwheel system to operate, and it resembled a bike. That's the picture. So as you kind of see, they just kind of sit comfortably, but they use their hands to operate the system. And more advancements. So for hundreds of years, there has been evolutions of the wheelchairs, and it went from a carriage style, a lot of the early ones, from the wheelbarrow to the carriage. But now they're more self-usable to where people can use them themselves. They don't have to be pushed all the time. In 1887, wheelchairs, or as they were calling them, wheelchairs, were used a lot in Atlantic City to help tourists enjoy the boardwalk that couldn't travel up and down the boardwalk. But then a lot of wealthier people would pay people to push them around so they could just kind of sit and enjoy. So it sort of defeats the purpose of what it was intended for. But as you can see, these pictures up in the corner kind of give you an idea. And the wheelchair sort of stemmed off as a business sort of approach, a business venture, especially taking a hike in 1933. Two mechanical engineers, Harry C. Jennings and Herbert Everest, they created the first lightweight and portable wheelchair that could be taken and transported easier for people. And then as time went on, the R.A. Harding Company began developing the first sort of electronical form of a wheelchair. This is in the 1930s. And George Klein is credited for the invention, the overall completion, in helping, and it was in the efforts to help those that returned from World War II that we saw the electrical wheelchairs. And Klein, the company, is one of the most common now for electrical wheelchairs. And these are just a bunch of different types of wheelchairs that have become used in society today. There's the one all the way in the corner with the covering over the man. They have ATV style ones. These are for different events. They've created a lot of different events and things that people in wheelchairs can go to and be comfortable and have fun as well. We can see the kid in the corner. He's able to play sports because the wheels are bigger for him. The one up at the top is an electrical one, and then one at the bottom is just a common one. You see a lot of those at the hospital if you get injured or a small ankle injury or something. So why is wheelchair so significant in society? They've helped a lot of people who are physically impaired to become much more mobile. Wheelchairs allow people with disabilities to be more independent. They don't have to rely on other people to transport them other places. They're able to do it themselves. And a lot of the wheelchairs now, they're able to push themselves and get themselves through and along. Wheelchairs give those who cannot walk the ability to travel and maintain daily tasks without much assistance. Some people in wheelchairs don't need assistance at all. They can live on their own, transport themselves, get to the places that they need. They've created an environment for those in wheelchairs, one of the most common being sports teams. So there's a lot more acceptance of wheelchairs. As you can see, there's different they have tennis, volleyball, basketball. There's a lot of different things that people in wheelchairs now have more access to as for themselves. But there are still a lot of issues that center around wheelchairs. The overall advancements of wheelchairs is very impressive. However, there are still issues that surround the usage. And we can look at things that actually when I thought of the issues, I think of the people that have to use the wheelchairs. So those who use a wheelchair, they suffer from things such as pressure sores and muscle cramps from sitting in such long periods of time. So the comfort of the wheelchair is really important. And that has come with the advancements, obviously, of how well they are able to make the wheelchair comforting and the right size for the people that have to use them every day. The uses of wheelchairs is also really dangerous. There's a lot of statistics online that people getting hit on their wheelchairs when they're trying to cross streets. There's a lot of accidents where drivers hit those that are in wheelchairs. Some improvements. I think the accessibility for wheelchairs is one of the ones, if you look up wheelchair improvements, the accessibility in America is not where it needs to be. There's a lot of areas and places that people in wheelchairs still can't go, or there's not adequate access. That is parking a vehicle that needs to take out a wheelchair, that is for the person in the wheelchair being able to access the event or other areas. Many places don't include or even offer special assistance to those who may be using a wheelchair, like concert venues. Some places like that, it may be harder for someone to access inside the building, get to their seat. So I think that there are a lot of areas of improvement and accessibility that surround wheelchairs, and the overall comfort level of them, being able to attend certain things and just being able to access them easily, even if they can access them on their own. So for the personal connection of me with wheelchairs, I have a close friend whose brother's in a wheelchair, and that's how I kind of got more in depth with the advancements that we need to see. He says one of the hardest. He's not completely verbal, but his mom said that one of the hardest things for him is the accessibility and being able to take him certain places and it not being a hassle or a problem. So yeah, he has cerebral palsy. Cerebral palsy is a congenital disorder of movement, muscle, or posture. So as you can see up in the corner, refers to muscular spasms. So it's hard for them to use their muscles and walk correctly. And so it's hard for them to just go out and do basic activities, even just going to the movies and getting inside, getting a comfortable seat if he can get out of his wheelchair, if there's a spot for a wheelchair to access in the aisles. There's a lot of different factors that she says makes it hard for them to really just want to get out of the house. And I think that's one of the biggest things with accessibility and the advancements is that we don't offer enough grounds for people who aren't at the same ability as everyone else. And one of his biggest interests, going kind of along with the sports, is working out, like wheelchair workouts. There's a lot of different people that have YouTube channels. I think it's really cool. You can there's some of them are no equipment, or just different ways to be active while also being in your wheelchair. I think that's one of the biggest problems also, she said, was his insecurity levels. He feels like he can't really do much. So I think that these are a really cool way. I kind of watch some of them, and they're really, really interactive. There's ones where you can have people helping you, or just ones that these people can do by themselves. It's really interactive. And here's some of my sources that I looked at. I looked at different medical sites and things like that. But thank you.